La labor educativa es muy importante para cualquier país. En la Ciudad de México contamos con una gran oferta educativa, pública y privada. En nuestra ciudad se fundaron dos de las universidades más antiguas de todo el continente americano. Es la Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México, conocida como la máxima casa de estudios, y el Instituto Politécnico Nacional, mejor conocida como el POLI. Ambas, la universidad en materia humanista y el Instituto Politécnico Nacional en materia técnica.
Asimismo, se forma el CIMBESTAP como Centro de Investigación en Ciencia, Tecnología y Estudios Avanzados para formar a profesionales de posgrado en materia de
That
investigación.
trains postgraduate experts in research and technology in order to train our future experts.
Declarado Patrimonio Cultural de la Humanidad en el año 2000.
Cultural heritage of UNESCO since 2007, the university has wonderful architecture, especially two of the buildings, the Olympic Stadium, the rectory, and the library, as well as the School of Philosophy and Arts. The university has many murals made with natural rocks. To our back, you can see the Central Library, which was painted by muralist Juan O'Gorman, a very recognized muralist who tried to depict the historical wealth of Mexico. To our side, you can see the rectory, which has murals made by the great David Alfaro Siqueiros. And when you cross Insurgentes, one of the most important avenues in our city, you will get to the Olympic Stadium. This stadium outside also has a mural painted by Diego Rivera. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. It's truly an honor to participate as moderator of this panel on education. The introduction of the UNAM really shows us the high quality that we want to achieve on this plenary as well. I believe that our speakers today are the best speakers out there to tackle this challenge, and I feel honored to share the panel with them. And I'd also like to invite everyone who wants to participate on the Facebook channel or on this screen. There is simultaneous interpretation into 3 languages, so I really believe that we can reach many people in order to disseminate information, raise awareness on the importance of education. In the words of Paulo Freire, education doesn't change the world, but it changes the people who will in turn change the world. Having said that, I want to go back to our guiding question so that all of our listeners and participants have that in mind as we head into the topic. The guiding question for today is, in what way do the different sectors and actors of social and solidarity economy can co-create locally solutions to global challenges? With this question in mind, I would like to first introduce a video that will be played.
No hay palabra verdadera que no sea unión inquebrantable entre acción y reflexión. Compartir saberes es parte fundamental.
There's always an important aspect in reflecting on education, because education can lead to a better quality of life for individuals and in turn people. Social and economic transformation can only happen through liberating education that can lead to well-being. It's important to innovate in education so that change agents with a critical awareness and participatory will emerge to build a more inclusive society. Social economy promotes a dialogue with many stakeholders that can exchange ideas for an alternative to our current development model. That's why education for solidarity can lead to greater inclusion and more respect of human rights. Welcome to the second plenary, Education, Learning and Research for Social and Solidarity Economy. Very well. So I want to go straight to our speakers. I first of all like to introduce them in the order in which they will be participating. I'll give you some information about them. But I've been informed that Monique Ayi has had internet problems and she hasn't been able to join us yet. We hope she can join us before the end of the session. But while we wait for her, we shall begin in this order. First, we will hear from Jose Luis Corajo, who is from Argentina. He's an economist. He's the director of the master's degree on social economy of the Universidad Nacional de General Sarmiento. He was rector of that university for 4 years as well. He's a professor of that university, invited speaker at the National University of Ecuador, and he is also currently a member of the Consejo Consultivo of INAES, which is the counterpart to Mexico's INAE, but in Argentina. Next, we will hear from Patxian Lo. Patxian Lo is currently Chief of Staff and Chief of Platform of the Asian Venture Philanthropy Network, AVPN, for social investors all around Asia. She was also advisor for policy creators in Asia, specifically for social and collaborative impact projects. Patxian has been a leader with more than 25 years of experience in many industries and many geographies. She was also senior vice president and head of the TBE Foundation and CFR Foundation. Before that, Patxian was head of philanthropy in Singapore to promote philanthropy in different sectors, specifically with donors. Thirdly, we will hear from Nancy Nimtam, who was founder of the first cooperation for urban communities in Canada in 1984. She contributed to building networks in Quebec, in Canada, and she has carried out a lot of international work since 1996. From 1996 to 2015, she was executive director of the Chamber of Economic and Social. She's a member of the Order of Canada, and she has received doctorates from the University of Concord and the University of Quebec. In fourth place, we will hear from Karen McGuire, who is head of Division and Local Employment of the OECD, and she currently works on policies for cluster systems for regional innovation. Before working for the OECD, she worked as an international consultant for economic development in investment banks in New York as research analyst. And she is also an economist and sociologist from the University of Chicago, as well as a public policy expert from Harvard University. Okay, unfortunately, we don't have Monique allí yet, so I will hold on to her bio until she joins us. And I would like to go directly to José Luis Coraggio. And your microphone is muted, Jose. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? I'd like to start by saying thank you to the organizers of the forum for giving me the opportunity to participate and being there in Mexico, even if only virtually. I greet all my fellow panelists and Jorge. First of all, I would like to say what I think social and solidarity economy means. Economy in general is a system that society builds to organize production, distribution, redistribution, circulation, and consumption processes to promote products that society finds useful to solve needs or demands. We can mention two projects that are in conflict. First of all, the social and solidarity economy model, which offers an economy made up by a democratic society with cultural diversity, with no poverty, an economy that seeks to create the material conditions to live in dignity and in harmony with nature. The motivation of individuals and the goal of that system is not accumulation, but rather sustaining life. The market is important in this model, but it requires regulation by society. To do this, the economy needs to be based on reciprocity, cooperation, complementarity, with competition, but always with the principle of solidarity. On the other hand, the neoliberal project that is still hegemonical today wants to be run by unequal powers, and it does not respect differences in terms of political ideologies and cultural diversities. It leads to rampant competition with no ethical constraints, where everyone seeks their individual joy, where some win and some lose, sometimes with cruelty. That market organizes the classes, wealth distribution, and all human activities are commoditized, including education, art, and politics. There's no room in that project for a state that can guarantee common good or for workers to self-organize and communities that are considered to be backwards by the system to survive. The neoliberal project started moving forward in all of our countries, responding to the needs of large corporations, and that led to a high concentration of wealth, poverty raised, and nature was also greatly affected. All of these trends are now, we are now suffering impacts from that seem to be irreversible. We can see the impacts of capitalism with extractivism, industrialization of many of our economies since the 1940s or 1970s, and that led to neoliberalism, which led to the impoverishment of our population since 1970. It was imposed by dictatorships and later on upheld by democratically elected governments. In the 40 years of neoliberalism, the doctrine has become mainstream, so to a greater or less extent, it becomes a part of everybody's common sense. People claim to want progress, but without social integration, without the possibility of reinsertion, and people who have traditionally been marginalized have continued to be excluded. Why do I say all of this? Because before we ask ourselves how to educate, we have to understand what our reality today is like. Teaching about social and solidarity economy is part of a struggle, a fight against this hegemony, because students carry the mainstream ideology with them. So educating implies deconstructing the neoliberal view of the world, of what's ethical, what's reasonable, possible, and impossible, and is part of our ideas. And it is time to change our education system. But to do that, we need to not only talk about economy, our youth needs to stop being so competitive, so individualistic, and they need to start caring about others, including their fellow classmates. Otherwise, there's a strange logic of meritocracy that nobody really understands. And instead of promoting horizontal growth where everyone can thrive, the opposite occurs. If no one questions this education system that we now have, it leads to the terrible results we're suffering from. And the system can be cruel to students, even. They can fail years. No one cares about that. And there's very little solidarity for those left behind. These values, the criteria, are what the market promotes to guarantee neoliberalism. Of course, there have been criticisms to the system, like Paulo Freire, who has spoken of the evils of this education, but they were never taken by mainstream education. It never assumed that critical pedagogy. So teaching about social and solidarity economy is a way forward, not only to reconsider economy, but to reconsider how we think of society, the causes of inequality, injustice, the lack of rationality, and to be more critical. When students see that economy is more about people's life stories, experiences, households, families, and neighbors, they will no longer ask themselves the question, why do I need to learn this? It's not only about changing what we teach about economy, but what we teach in general, the values that we convey. Universities need to be in contact with local communities, which must participate in the learning process by promoting proposals, suggestions to deal with daily problems and eventually the problems of the whole world. Students and professors need to be active members of their societies as well. The education system needs to completely reform to give more freedom to students and professors to teach and learn about a new economy that is possible because there are alternatives to neoliberalism. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, José Luis.
Thank you very much, José Luis. Thank you for your words. I will make a recap of the main concepts that all of our speakers present at the end, but first I'd like to give the floor to Patzian Loh. Thank you, Patzian.
Thank you very much, and a very good day to everyone. I'm so happy to be here, and I very much appreciate the opportunity to share Asia's perspective with everyone here as well. To give you some background, I come from an organization called AVPN, and we represent Asia's largest funders network that includes foundations, philanthropic organizations, companies who have social impact resources, impact investors, as well as sustainability and ESG investors. Now, it may not be very intuitive what role these kinds of organizations will play in the social and solidarity economy, but they bring very important financial, human, and intellectual capital to support the growth of the social and solidarity economy, because we know that social and solidarity economies cannot exist only through the power and passion of civil society organizations alone. So this is the perspective that I would like to share from today, particularly towards the point of how we see cooperative education with a social solidarity vision in both formal and non-formal schemes grow throughout Asia. I want to first share a perspective about this idea of life cycle of the human being, because certainly in Asia, we are seeing that there are opportunities for more such kinds of resources to work more closely in education across the life cycle of anybody that lives in this region. Starting from early childhood, it is already clear that the education programs traditionally in the region that started at the first year of formal schooling is not enough. Increasingly, there is a realization of the importance of early childhood and preschool education as being critical in a young person's development, And so, furthermore, there is a realization that holistic and community-based nature of early childhood education has implications for the future development potential of the nation and further economic and developmental implications as well. We do see that there is a need for more longitudinal research in this area, although there is already more impact research that shows data that the education programs are starting to see effect in these areas today. What is really more exciting is that there are even more examples where both corporate, business, and philanthropic organizations have come together to support the development of holistic early childhood education solutions, as we have seen among some of our social investment members already in India. It is clear, though, that there needs to be greater investment in technology for communities to access education resources for preschool children, especially in the post-pandemic environment, which we hope can also lead to greater literacy, numeracy readiness for formal school. However, aside from literacy, numeracy, and academic learning, I also want to talk a little bit about the importance of social emotional learning and vocational learning and skills development. These are just as important in terms of the role that education can play for the future of Asia, and social and emotional learning in particular has been increasingly of concern. Although many countries in Asia have seen that there is improvement in academic achievement in formal schooling, we are also recognizing that there is an increasing risk of an epidemic of mental health challenges for young people. This is of concern because in a COVID environment, this has been exacerbated as more and more people are stuck at home and more students are also learning from home, and they have reduced social interaction as a result. Family and community bonds are under stress, and that has led to greater incidences of reported mental health challenges, not to mention what we cannot see. In some places, we have called this a mental health tsunami that may be emerging. This is disturbing for us, but it also gives us a new opportunity for the social and solidarity economy to take action. We have seen, for example, that there are experiments in Singapore, in other parts of Asia, where the importance of mental well-being are being looked at and funded in the form of research, in the form of potentially impact bond experiments, and also, especially since we now have the World Mental Health Day coming up, as something for us to think about. And last but not least, I want to talk briefly about the importance of vocational learning and skills. Beyond academic learning, and certainly now that we are going into a post-pandemic reality, it is even more important that we see an opportunity for us to continue to empower our young people with the right skills and the right vocational ability to be able to earn a dignified livelihood and also be able to support themselves in a post-pandemic environment in the most resilient manner. However, many vocational institutions and vocational solutions do not have a holistic program or an integrated way to be working with the business sector or the private sector in order to provide apprenticeship, skills training, and a feasible and practical approach towards how they will transition from school to work. And this is something that is certainly gaining interest around the world, but in Asia, we are starting to see that even national level and policy level programs like in India's National Skills Development Mission, for example, or even municipality programs like the Lighthouse Foundation in Pune City, India, are already establishing local ecosystems where you see municipal government support, local businesses, and organizations like philanthropic foundations and nonprofits jointly work together to support urban young people and strengthen their opportunities, strengthen their skills and vocational ability to be able to lead dignified lives in a post-pandemic reality as they leave the school. I will stop my remarks here, but I hope that gives you a brief indication for what we're seeing in this part of the world. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Patian, por tus palabras.
Thank you very much for your message, for your presentation. And now I would like to invite Nancy Neilman to go ahead, please. Hello, good morning. It's a great pleasure to participate in this panel from GCEF, and I would like to highlight the importance of research and researchers. In fact, I had been in close contact with Professor Coelho and professors from Brazil. So we also learned a lot about the importance for stakeholders to participate in associations in order to build this world that we all dream of. Just to give you a bit of background, I am from Quebec, where the social economy movement is very strong and it is very well established in the entire territory. It's also organized in an umbrella association. So there are several different stakeholders who participate. There are producers, for example, who have always organized in order to promote and develop the social economy in Quebec. The good news is that today, after 30 years of the beginning of the movement, youth has really taken leadership for the movement. And this is mainly because of the fact that we have invested quite a lot over many years in partnerships and collaboration with several academic and research institutions, with youth and yeah, mainly students. So in these few minutes, I would like to provide some examples of practices that have been of great importance to the development of the social economy movement. Of course, there have also been individual partnerships, but the challenge is not only to rely on individuals, but also to create institutional partnerships. Therefore, since 2001 and for over 10 years, we had a partnership between research, universities, and collectivity, and this allowed to create links with associations in many higher education institutions. So all of the research carried out by these researchers were meeting the needs and the demand identified by SSE stakeholders. Therefore, people had the opportunity to gather new knowledge. And since they are researchers, this new information was included directly in the syllabus for university programs. So the results for students were much better and they knew the challenges that the movement was facing with much more clarity. So from the beginning, this allowed us to establish many points of contact in the international arena and to be aware of what is done in other places. We also saw the impact of this research work and its results in the development of public policies. As you know, it is important to find support among political stakeholders, and the researchers' work needs to be disseminated by politics as well. So this research process has allowed us to make great leaps forward. We have not only worked with researchers, but we also have had great experience that has allowed us to build a structure for SSE at schools. So for example, during many years, we had a cooperative network for young people where they created their own groups, their cooperatives, and they learned about what it takes to form one, or how to work together, and so on. So our experience was very productive, it was very enriching, and we were also able to grant scholarships to students at university level and higher institution educations in general, so that they could learn how to apply SSE principles in their own context and in their own social reality. This helped many young people learn about new tools and concepts, and university students came together to implement SSE measures in their academic institutions. both to demand that, for example, management schools taught about productive economies and not only about the neoliberal models. This on the one hand, and then on the other hand, in certain universities, there are now student associations which invest on the programs necessary to meet their own needs. In the University of Concordia, for example, students took their nutrition into their own hands, and in fact, they created a fund to build little cooperatives there and in other universities across the province to have programs like this. So more recently, there have been more initiatives. There are knowledge transfer initiatives mainly. And as the previous professor mentioned, the main challenge for education right now is to deconstruct neoliberal analyses that have been applied to all of the programs which transmit a vision that is not our own. And the main goal is to have a different vision in the management, engineering departments. It's all based on social principles and values. So researchers need to do their work in a useful way so that our livelihood, our practices may change. And this is something that will not naturally happen or spontaneously happen. We must all work towards this purpose and all contribute. And we must ensure that social and solidarity economy is present at the academic institutions. It should not only be limited to one subject. It should be cross-cutting and be a part of all disciplines because it's about shifting paradigms and changing society. It's not only about social work, but it also involves all sciences, be they social sciences or physical sciences. So in order to do this, we must participate and we need to have several different approaches. Thank you. Thank you very much, Nancy, for your words. And now I would like to introduce Karen McGill. And then with Karen, we will finish the first round. And afterwards, we will go back to the first participants for the second question. Go ahead, Karen.
Great. Well, thank you. And it's really a pleasure to join you. And I apologize I can't be with you in Mexico City, but at least part of this group of 150 countries we heard that are able to log in or participate in person. So, I mean, I think this topic is really interesting from the perspective that at the core, the social and solidarity economy is about people. And so the education system and some of the other speakers have really highlighted how critical it is just for the foundations of society and our thinking. Maybe I'll focus a little bit on the specifics of how some of these common skill sets are very useful, a little bit, as Patsy mentioned, in the current work environment, a little bit about how science and technology can also benefit from the social and solidarity economy perspectives as it evolves. So I'm coming from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, based in Paris, but covers countries from the Americas to Europe to Asia. And we've been focused on the social and solidarity economy in the last 25 years because of these local roots, as was said in the introduction, because we really see the sort of bottom-up initiatives and the importance this plays for local development more generally. So that's really the origins of the OECD work in this field. But we're also seeing a trend. So as some of the speakers have talked about trying to change some of the paradigms and perspectives, what we're seeing is actually with member countries that social and solidarity economy is going from the margins to the mainstream. And so it's actually becoming a much higher issue on the political agendas, which also has implications then for our education systems more generally. So in terms of a couple areas or a couple opportunities that we conceive, and the other speakers have mentioned this, youth or younger generations are really emphasizing in their interests for their careers, the importance of some of these values of the social and solidarity economy. And in some of these studies, 2/3 are saying that they want to work in their professional lives in entities that are addressing social and environmental challenges. So this groundswell also has implications then for how we think about some of these education systems, in particular for entrepreneurial skills, because there are programs that are supporting entrepreneurship, but entrepreneurship for the social and solidarity economy combines different types of skill sets that we need to think about both, in early education and in higher education. And in terms of the early education, I just wanted to highlight again what some of the speakers have said, and the OECD reinforces those messages about the importance of these socio-emotional skills, and empathy, I think that was also raised earlier, are really coming up in OECD work about education, and also in OECD work about employment, what is needed in the job market. And so these are opportunities where we see the social and solidarity economy values and the needs of that area of entities, but also even beyond in the wider economy. We really see those opportunities to reinforce each other through the education system. We've also seen interesting examples of social and solidarity economy entities actually cooperating with local educational systems in order to promote these kinds of values. And so just one example, Crédit Coopératif in France has done work with primary schools to talk about cooperatives as a model. You have other places that have been focusing, as we just heard about, sometimes these more public-private, local government partnerships. And I know Canada has, in particular, Quebec has many of those. I also wanted to flag that as this broader political support for the social and solidarity economy is raised in political circles, that we're seeing an increasing interest in the education system. And so, for example, the French law on the social and solidarity economy created the Higher Council for the social solidarity economy. And one of their goals is, of course, to promote social entrepreneurship through the public education system. Or, for example, in Croatia, where their strategy for development of social entrepreneurship allocates a budget to educational activities. So we're really seeing, in a sense, a confluence of opportunities. In the last minute, I just wanted to maybe then raise a little bit on the science and technology side of the question that we were posed, because digitalization has positive effects and negative effects on societies, and the social and solidarity economy has opportunities to take advantage of digitalization for new ways of working and engaging with different communities, but it also has implications for the business models that they use. But from a perspective of education and skills, it also means we need to ensure that those that are working in the social and solidarity economy have the skills to then be able to take advantage of these new science, technology, and digital tools. And finally, just a point about science and technology more generally. We're trying to highlight in OECD work really the innovations that are created by the social and solidarity economy so that these can be mainstreamed, not only in education systems, but in wider business models. So really a lot of fertile ground, and just to echo a lot of the same issues raised by other speakers, we are seeing in OECD work as well.
Muy bien, muchas gracias, Karen. Bueno.
Thank you very much, Karen. So I would like to spontaneously provide some conclusions regarding some of the presentations that were made, and I'm sorry if I omit something that was important, but then after this summary, we could move on to the second round. So Jose Luis talked about the definition of SSE, and afterwards he reflected upon the difference between neoliberalism and the consequences of this method, and how we can change the situation through education. He said that first we need to deconstruct and step away from subjectivity, because there is a very high cultural load that will condition any of the messages for the social economy. So this is necessary to first deconstruct, to then educate. And then Patson Lowe talked about how change in the economy, when it comes to social economy, it is not only necessary to have passion and dedication from those who are already convinced about it, but we also need a capital, human capital as well, people who contribute, and also material capital. And basically, what would need to take place is the creation of holistic social and emotional education, and the society should be reconfigured based on these main principles. And in this case, she was specifically talking about Asia. Nancy talked about the experience they've had in Quebec, which is also very well acknowledged around the world because of the progress that they have made so far. And they highlighted the progress made on research in the research field and practical concrete applications. Sometimes research is too abstract and it doesn't translate into practice. However, it is important to have research to meet needs in very concrete situations. And in this case, it is necessary to have the support of public policies. This is the second part of the presentation. In Karen's case, who works for OECD, in all of the countries around the world, there have been trends where you can see that there is an increase in social and solidarity economy, not only at the edge of society, but also taking now priority. And they start to shape some public policies in this new reality. And there's also a movement among young people who wish to work in places or for entities that are looking to address social and environmental challenges. And in order to achieve this, it will be necessary to change the mindset of people so that people are valued above capital. So having said that, and I hope I did not misinterpret anything that you said. I hope the summary was good. And now we are going to move on to the second round. I am going to read the question for the second round, and all of the speakers will provide their answers in the same order. Which should be the actions and strategies of people, governments, groups, societies, countries to have a better and more inclusive world? What are the key actions that must be taken at the local level? Go ahead, Jose Luis. Thank you very much, Jorge. On the social basis of the current system, the many different ways to have SSE need to be explored, and this is fundamental. It should be part of our strategy. While neoliberalism tries to spread even more in our society, in the territories, we need to create producers, communities that are well articulated as production and reproduction systems, looking for self-reliance. As I said in my previous intervention, educational action is key, just as research is. Researchers must collect, record, and disseminate the social and solidarity economy experiences that are oftentimes invisible. And the best mode of action is to have participatory research where researchers become a part of the process. SSE principles are well explained, and there are many examples of its success in meeting individuals' needs and the community's needs. Therefore, it is possible that it will grow even more. SSE is also based on local action and local bonds. So to build an SSE system to get rid of the way we see capital, we need to increase our scale. For example, programmers who created the Linux system and threatened Microsoft with its creation. And there is a deficit right now if we wish to achieve a greater scale for SSE. Universities should have contact with the territories, and technological development should also follow all of the regional and international progress that's made in the technological side. All of the organizations that fund research at universities should also be a part of this initiative. Technological tools should not be privatized by the patent system, which also threatens SSE and follows neoliberalism instead. Science and technology are not the only ways in which we can know and do. Ancestral knowledge and traditional knowledge from workers should be combined with science, such as in the case of agroecology. So we need to keep promoting the cultural richness. So knowledge is a public good. It's not merchandise. We cannot separate supply from demand because we are not exchanging things, but rather knowledge, values, principles, which demands reciprocity and not market mechanisms. And these relationships, whenever there is a proximity, it is possible it is only possible to do this if we step away from neoliberalism. And all of this requires greater institutional changes that possibly will last 20 or 30 years, which happened before with industrialization and then the turn to neoliberalism. This is not a technical issue, it's a political issue, because in a globalized world, we need regional partnerships. And we also started to try to do this in the South Cone at the very beginning. But it is not only necessary to have democratic states, but also movements such as feminism, indigenous rights, producers movements, youth movements, and organizations which work against the great powers of globalization. After the pandemic, the World Social Forum should also regain its power, and SSE should also be one of their priorities. Thank you. Thank you very much, Jose Luis. Now, Patien Lo, please go ahead with your answer.
Thank you very much. And it is very insightful to hear from Professor and his comments. I feel that in Asia, there are going to be a few strategies that will be critical for individuals, governments, groups, and other parts of Asian countries to achieve more inclusion in this world. Firstly, technology needs to be recognized as a key enabler to a post-pandemic Asia, but it is even more critical that any digital divide that we see has to be closed. So, for example, even while we want to support the ability by young people in digital entrepreneurship, we also need to make sure that they actually have access to digital tools and the support system in a digital economy. SEA Group, which is one of Southeast Asia's most successful digital companies and is now listed in the public markets for large amounts of capital, has been investing its social impact resources into this in Indonesia and the rest of Asia, for example. It's important to recognize that in this part of the world, numbers don't necessarily tell the full picture, because even though you do see high levels of digital device penetration rates, there is still digital poverty to be found. That is where internet access and devices are inadequate, unstable, or perhaps there are communities that are falling through the cracks, which do not have access to the full services that programs can deliver from the government. So it is even more important than for the social and solidarity economy to be stepping in and responding in a nimble and agile way. So we see, for example, Maybank, which is a commercial bank in Asia, work closely with nonprofits like Engineering Good to harness voluntary resources from the companies. They will upcycle the decommissioned computers so that school-going children from low-income families continue to have access to devices and internet access. So I feel very strongly that technology is an enabler, but the digital divide must be addressed. Secondly, we have to look at enforcing and improving inclusive access. What I mean is access to equal opportunity by women and girls, and also by persons of disability. We know that in countries like India, there has been a lot of work done by nonprofit organizations like Educate Girls, who have been supported by global foundations around the world, that will be doing this work. But there are other innovative ways that we can also ensure there is inclusive access. So for example, AVPN has set up Asia's first high net worth philanthropic network focusing on gender equality that comprises philanthropists from Asia. We now represent over 30 philanthropists across 12 countries that are committed to bringing better outcomes to women and girls through key critical areas like education. There is also the Disability Impact Fund, which is incubated by GDI, that is investing in innovative technology and accessible solutions to ensure that physical disability is not an impediment to a dignified life. So there are examples of diverse ways that social and solidarity economy actors can also support inclusive access. Thirdly, I think it's important that the social and solidarity economy continues to catalyze more innovations that will unlock resources for holistic support. Look at new ways that capital can be moved to support social and solidarity actors, like development impact bonds. Like, for example, Singapore recently piloting the world's first ever social impact guarantee to provide skills and livelihoods to young people. Private philanthropic foundations, corporate foundations, social and impact investors, social enterprises, and even state governments can all work together in order to make these kinds of innovations possible. Climate and sustainability, fourthly, is also very critical because we are already past the tipping point of action to be taken. As we talk about education, as we talk about research, we should continue to ensure that sustainability and a climate awareness is integrated and not just thought about after the fact. This is especially exciting in Asia because we do see and are the victims of incredible climate disasters that can happen. And in countries like Indonesia, for example, we are already seeing that there are close partnerships between its Ministry of Education, its Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy, coordinating Ministry of Economic Affairs, all working very closely with local municipalities and provincial governments, investors, academic institutions, philanthropists, and social organizations, and businesses, so that they can achieve this new level of inclusive development. And last but not least, this will not work without empowering local governments. And I think in the context of this forum, that's especially important. Local governments, local municipalities can become the hubs and the creators of local ecosystems of impact. when they are growing social and solidarity economy, they are also working with sustainable investors, philanthropists, impact funders, civil society organizations, and businesses. Are local governments well ready to engage in these partnerships? We think that there is more room here to build the capability of local governments to do this. And we've done this already in ABPN's programs, where policymakers are supported to work with this group of social investors that I just talked about. And we engage with partners like the Toyota Foundation or the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia Pacific, with Rockefeller Foundation. And these are just the beginning of more movements that we see where local, state, municipal, or district governments can strengthen the role that they play in the localization plans for sustainable development for their nations. We are seeing it already emerging in more and more association of local governments and mayors, and they are actively partnering with different stakeholders, including academic institutions, including social investors, to make this happen. And so I am excited about this level of growth. Thank you.
Bueno, muchas gracias, Patxian. Permitimos que se tome unos minutos más.
Thank you very much, Patxian. And we do have a few more minutes because since we have the time that was originally allotted for Monique, the professor who is not here, we do have a few more minutes. So thank you very much, Patxian. Nancy, over to you. Thank you. Yes, good morning. So what can we do in the face of these challenges? It's very clear that what we want to do is transform society, but to do that, we need mobilization, social mobilization, mobilization of our youth, and specifically students. Everywhere in the world, young people are concerned about the environment, the future of the planet, social inequality. So in universities and learning centers, it's very important to continue to promote social economy. We need to align with interests of students, and that way our movement will also grow. Speaking of public policies, another challenge that we have seen in Quebec for many years, and we have managed to make progress in that area, is in insisting with governments, with institutions, so they support innovation. Because we've heard a lot about innovation for many years, but more specifically about technological innovation. But there are millions or billions of dollars that are given to researchers, to companies to create new technology, transfer it, sell it, and eventually lead to growth. But this only benefits private companies. We have worked for many years to try to recognize that society has needs that go beyond new technology patents. We need to innovate in other respects as well. And this requires investment in figures as high as the figures I gave you for technological investment. At least social innovation has been recognized in social public policies today, but there's still a long road ahead of us. We continue to insist on the need for resources to transfer knowledge. Because again, companies receive a lot of funding, but for social innovation, finding new ways to produce together, everything that social and solidarity economy promotes are equally important. And this has allowed us to create an organization that focuses on knowledge transfer and information exchange so that small businesses in poor societies that have interesting ideas can receive the drive that they need to grow, to take their ideas and make them have greater reach. That's what knowledge transfer is about. And we need to continue to insist on that, the importance of investing on social innovation and on learning to promote those innovations. Transfer is extremely important, knowledge transfer, not only in universities, but also with artists, with cultural centers. There are many ways to disseminate the knowledge that has been acquired and that social solidarity economy stakeholders create. And this has to do with teaching and learning. It has to do with civil society organizations, and it's based on collaboration. I'd also mention the challenge that our institutions face when recognizing the importance of field work that professors must do. Of course, it takes time, but this is a way to make them come closer to the communities, to the groups that are innovating socially. And this is a way that our learning centers can stay in touch with the communities. How can this be achieved? In Canada, we usually don't have a lunch break in schools. So in social and solidarity economy, there was an initiative to offer lunch at very accessible prices to students in schools across the country. In some cases, the students in elementary schools got involved in the production of the food products through a cooperative. So that helped them to be a part of a project that promoted social economy. And this is another way to learn and to get students involved from a very early age. This is an important challenge to address, in my opinion, both through public policies and through civil society mobilization. There are many things that we can do to make transformation a reality. Thank you. Thank you very much, Nancy. And finally, to end our second round, I want to turn it over to Karen Maguire. Go on, Karen.
Great, thanks. Maybe a first point that we're seeing, especially in as a result of COVID, is a political discourse about building back better. And so what we're seeing is a lot of countries are putting in their COVID recovery packages a greater emphasis on the social and solidarity economy to do exactly what Nancy was saying, focus on that transformation role. And so really a recognition that the social economy is not only about repairing or fixing particular problems, but has this broader goal of helping to transform in all sorts of areas, environmental, social, etc. And so this is a trend that we're seeing that then has opportunities at the local level to operationalize, but there's already, we're seeing national funds being put in place in order to support this. And they're also starting to view the social and solidarity economy in terms of its ability to create resilience in our economies and societies. And this is an area that has been shown in terms of the resilience of these entities with respect to employment in different crises, where social and solidarity economy entities tend to preserve employment better than some of the other economic actors, but also a recognition that there is a need to embed this more deeply in our economies and societies. So really, I think this first point, and we see it very strongly in a lot of the political discourse in a sort of post-COVID or looking ahead type of environment. A second point, just on the sort of already before COVID, a lot of governments had local and regional development strategies that were looking to the social and solidarity economy as an integral part of their actions. And we've had some papers looking at what some of the regions in different countries are doing. And in some cases, they're using it as part of their innovation strategy, to pick up on the point about financing for innovation and in particular social innovation. And in some cases, they're using it as an opportunity to address particular issues in the labor market and to support the development of skills and employment amongst those that are maybe more removed from the labor market. And a lot of work also on environmental considerations and contributions to, for example, the circular economy as part of their local plans. So I think, and as Patien mentioned, this localization of SDGs is a related effort in this holistic view of development and what local and regional governments within countries are seeking to promote, building on social and solidarity economy actors. So maybe a third point then on, so what is it that they can do or do more or do better in order to support this really fertile local environment for capitalizing on the social and solidarity economy as this tool for transformation. And, at the OECD, we have been developing some tools and toolkits that cities and regions can access, looking at social innovation ecosystems and what are different levers that can be used to just create a more fertile environment for social innovation, but also supporting, for example, entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial models through the Better Entrepreneurship Policy tool as a diagnostic to help these local and regional ecosystems identify what they can do more of. And so, I mean, some of the areas, of course, are related to procurement policies, finance policies, education, engagement with civil society. But I think that there is really, as everyone has seen, a lot of the pilot projects that we see locally are what can get scaled up. And so national and subnational governments all have an interest in seeing these subnational experiments.
Bueno, muchas gracias, Karen.
Very well. Thank you very much, Karen, for your participation. Just as I did after the first round, I will try to summarize what has been said in this second round. Jose Luis talked to us about the importance of strengthening local economies from the bottom up, starting at university levels and participating in research projects locally in order to improve the general situation and eventually scale that up to face the challenges posed by globalization. So the idea is to globalize solidarity. I think that would be a good conclusion. Patien mentioned the importance of empowering local governments, but before that, it's very important to solve the digital gap that exists in Asia in particular, so that from a very early age, students and young people can have access to these technologies and tools, specifically those related to education. Then more inclusive strategies can be developed. She mentioned some examples, the importance of mental health, the example of disability, the example of girls in India, and ways of integrating them. Nancy also talked to us about the importance of social mobilization of our youths who seek structural changes, especially giving importance to the environment, to protecting the planet, and fighting against inequality. Education must be a support system for young people, and that's where universities come in. And public policies must also recognize the importance of social innovation. Stop giving so much importance to technology patents of large companies that are funded with public resources, but that eventually translate into private benefits. Local experiences must also be exchanged. We can learn from each other. There is a saying that universities are a good place to learn, but it's a bad place to transfer, because I think what is missing is the actual application of that knowledge. So universities are very good at conveying concepts, at we students can read books, but that doesn't eventually get transferred into society and benefits for society. Karen brings up the question of how governments seek to reconstruct, rebuild the world, but is the idea to go back to the way things were, or should we take this crisis as an opportunity to promote social economy so that it can truly transform society? In society, we hear that the pandemic has made the selfish more selfish, and those who promote solidarity do it even more. But we'll see what happens in the future. In social economy, I think we're all convinced that no one wants to go back to the way things were. And I think all of our speakers have one way or another expressed that. I want to give the floor now for 2-3 minutes to our speakers once again for their conclusions, for their closing remarks. And that will be, let's say, your final say. I will not make a summary of your conclusions because I think you should have the final say. But let's begin then our final round. Jose Luis? Thank you very much, Jorge. Having heard the very interesting contributions of all my fellow panelists, I sit here thinking about how to make the best use of these 2 minutes that I have. I must say that my perspective is very local. It's very Latin American. I believe that we are countries that have always been in the periphery of capitalism, and therefore we face an irreversible crisis, I fear, of a loss of jobs, of high levels of unemployment, of very high levels of informality, and countries that used to be mid-income countries in the world now have very high poverty rates, especially amongst the children. And I say that this is irreversible with the model of the past. It cannot be fought against with traditional capitalist entrepreneurship. It's inevitable to consider that there's a need for political will, a political will that is based on transformation. I do believe in what Karen was saying about rebuilding with the new perspective that promotes true transformation. Today, we face the question of whether we want merely to survive or if we want to transform to thrive. And this means fighting against the dominant model that we have had for many years. Perhaps we can look at the example of Chile, where society seemed to be at peace after decades of neoliberalism, and all of a sudden, we realized that it was a ticking bomb. And eventually, all the problems, the social conflicts emerged. And the way the government had been dealing with education, with public services, all of these problems were faced, and now they're in the middle of a transformation. We see similar struggles taking place in Colombia and other places in our region. We need more democracy in my region, and I think that's my conclusion. When it comes to education, I think it goes beyond transferring knowledge. I think this is about having an open dialogue where knowledge can be translated, not only transferred, but translated. And we need to learn from workers, communities, the scientists, researchers. That, I think, is the challenge that we must face today. Thank you. Thank you, Jose Luis. Patzian, your conclusions, please.
Thank you very much, everybody. It is difficult to conclude because I feel like we are still at the beginning of a journey. But I feel that it is also important for us to recognize that COVID had been a big turning point, because not only did we face the challenges of the pandemic, but we also had to be responsive, adaptable, and resilient, not just across governments, but also at different sectors of society. And then from there, we can see how much opportunity exists for us to create more impact as we learn our lessons from the pandemic. From Asia's perspective, we have been the first countries to be hit when the pandemic began. We were also the first to see the second and the third waves. And we are also now seeing the long-term implication of the pandemic on youth and all the other segments of society. In the process, even across our region, we are seeing many different models to how countries have been reopening their economies and how they are supporting different segments of their communities. So even amid all of this, I feel very optimistic as I am sitting in Singapore in the middle of this region. And one of the reasons I feel optimistic is because I remember 2 years ago, in 2019, when I was last in Mexico City, I was there in person. And yet today I'm speaking to Mexico City virtually while I'm in Singapore. And this kind of bridge and this kind of connection wouldn't have been possible in a way if it wasn't because of a crisis like the pandemic. And from this, I feel, is what comes the opportunity. I feel that traditional forms of education, traditional forms of funding, traditional forms of academia are all ready to transform, as our other speakers have already said. And how the concepts of social and solidarity economy will create new opportunities for this transformation is the exciting work ahead of us. So in ABPN, for example, we are already seeing that there are innovative forms of learning for the social and solidarity economy actors. At a community level, we are looking at programs and opportunities to reskill, to be improving in digital education, to be trained in entrepreneurship, all supported by government and private sector. At a funder level, we are seeing that there's continued training and development at an academic level in new ways like sustainability and ESG. And at a practitioner level, we are also recognizing that the challenges that we faced in COVID gives us new opportunities to learn across borders. So we are seeing, in fact, an opportunity for more sharing and exchange and knowledge building across the global south, including opportunities to learn between Asia and Africa, between Latin America and Africa, between Asia, Latin America in the future, we hope, so that we can even see more of such kinds of global learning that the pandemic had, in a way, made possible. So I feel that even though we were all physically kept apart because of the pandemic, we have, in an ironic way, broke our boundaries in medical challenges and solutions, and also in breaking barriers across countries, and that will not slow down. So next year, for example, the G20 is going to be hosted in Asia, in Indonesia, in 2022. And we really see that this is another new way for us to see how the world can show a spirit of resilience, with hopefully GCEF's forum today as our first opportunity to do so, and rise above, and the social and solidarity economy can rise above, so that we can see greater achievement in sustainable development. Thank you.
Gracias, Patchen.
Thank you,
Em,
Patsion.
tus minutos de conclusión.
Nancy, your conclusions, please.
Je vais y aller. Oui, je vais essayer d'aller très rapidement. Bon, je crois
Yes, I will try to be very brief.
qu'une autre personne a mentionné à quel point on est dans un moment
I believe
où l'avenir même de notre planète est
that we
est menacé.
are at a crucial moment in history where the future of our planet is at risk if we listen to scientists, to experts.
Alors, je crois que autant pour les inégalités sociales que ce
We
défi écologique,
They have told us that we will not
dans la
fight against climate change unless we change our economic model. And that's why we need to invest on educating our future leaders. I want to underscore the importance of reconsidering how we teach economy at universities. All of the theory that used to tell us that the private sector should be left alone, that the free market would regulate itself, that has not really worked. However, this continues to be taught. The neoliberal model continues to be taught. Private administration continues to be promoted. So if we want a true transformation, we need to change our education systems as well, change our programs, our curricula, so that we can train our youth, our future leaders in a different way. As has been said, knowledge transfer is extremely important. Knowledge comes from communities. Knowledge is born at the grassroots level. So this conference, this forum is an important space to talk about this. And we can all learn from each other. We can learn for mayors, for instance, and that way we can all contribute to change that will benefit our planet and humanity as a whole. We must invest in our youth. The G7 stated the importance of hearing the voice of our youth, and I think we need to listen to them. If we invest on our youth, if we give them the space, they will take us further, and we will also get there faster. I feel very grateful that the G7 really highlighted this important point for the future of our societies. Thank you very much. Karen?
Great, thanks, Jorge. Maybe just a couple points on some of the actions that we can take, and in particular, the OECD and others who are helping to produce statistics and tools that can then be used globally. So just a first point that we're actually around the world, we have very poor statistics on just how big the social and solidarity economy already is in terms of employment, GDP, very different figures and ways they're calculated around the world. So I think one of the first things we can do to take all of this forward is really improve our knowledge and awareness so that policymakers see already how big it is and what the potential is going forward. A second area is, I think, raising awareness about what are the stumbling blocks or the barriers that a lot of the social and solidarity economy actors are facing in order to do, to grow, to create, and for other social funders to create more of them. Right now, as part of some work the OECD is doing on a global action with some support from the Commission, we're trying to support some guidebooks on legal frameworks and other tools that really help ensure that there are these particular stumbling blocks, whether it can be access to financing or others, that these actors. Another area where it will be, I think, increasingly important to raise the profile is this issue of measuring social impact, which there are lots of different tools, but there's a lot more we can do. And there's also some concerns to make sure that those models for measuring social impact that will help raise awareness about the actions of the social solidarity economy, that those measures are sometimes not sufficiently taking into account perhaps some of these issues like community empowerment and some of the harder areas to measure. So a caution to make sure that our different tools make sure that we are accounting for some of these from social and solidarity economy actions. And I think maybe just one last point on this sort of cross-border learning that was raised. And I think, you know, given that we have different models and different approaches internationally, having those opportunities, and as some people were saying, from local to local, will be very important to take it forward and also to create opportunities for even commerce and trade across different social economy actors. And as part of this global action, we have peer learning partnerships that are consortia of dozens of different countries and stakeholders to try and really learn from these different models and propose new opportunities and actions going forward with the learnings that they take. So I think that there's a lot of work, at least for those trying to promote the social and solidarity economy, to help us in convincing policymakers, not only for those ministries that have responsibility for the social and solidarity economy, but for the health ministers, the culture ministers, and all, you know, the economic ministers, and all of them who can see the different types of benefits that we can derive from the social and solidarity economy, so that we, as policy makers, make those decisions. They make those investments taking into account what they can actually, what they are achieving and what they can achieve even more in the future. So hoping that that different countries all take up this this banner in order to help unleash the social and solidarity economy.
Bueno, muchas gracias.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you all for sharing your conclusions. As I said, I will not present my conclusion to your conclusions, but I do have a final word to leave you with. I think the importance of exchanging experiences is evident in this panel. I feel very sorry that we couldn't have Monique Ayi from Cameroon sharing her vision, because you were all speaking from a different part of the world, about a different reality. We had Nancy in Canada, Patsy in Singapore, Jose speaking about the realities of Latin America, and Karen gave us a more global perspective, but she also talked about the difficulties of generalizing. It's very hard to take the average where there is no average, because if I get a 9 and Karen gets a 1, the average would be 5, but we cannot say that a 5 is the grade that the world should have. So I think it's really important to promote these exchanges and to be open to learn from each other. I don't know how we're doing in terms of time, if there's time to receive questions or if we should simply close the panel. Of course, before we close, we will take a picture, but those who are in the in-person event maybe can tell me what to do next. Yes, I think there are some questions in the chat, and I don't know if we have time for questions from the audience here. Is there time for questions? No, it seems like unfortunately we ran out of time. Very well, then I'd just like to invite all our panelists to turn on their cameras to take the picture. We will all get together as if we were in person and close this panel with a smile and a thank you. A special thank you to Mexico. The first question says, social and solidarity economy is also a sustainable cooperative energy. What do you think about that? Another question is about including the experiences of social and solidarity economy since basic education. Do you believe this should be introduced in formal and informal education at a very early age? Tell me if you would like to answer any of these questions. Just raise your hand. Let me know if you would like to give an answer.
Bueno, Patchen, ¿levantaste la mano?
Patsen?
Yes, I will just quickly and briefly respond to that first question about the idea of this being a cooperative energy. I do agree that that is what it is. In fact, if we look at what Karen mentioned earlier about the importance of measuring impact and putting definition around impact, it becomes the motivation for energy from different parts of society to come together and to work in cooperation and work in collaboration. So I think when you see actors from different segments of society and different walks of life come together around a common goal and wanting to build it together by mobilizing their resources and mobilizing their competencies, then that is what appears to me the beginnings of a social and solidarity economy. Thank you.
Karen, ¿estás con la mano levantada?
Karen, you also raise your hand?
Yeah, Jorge, just to respond, I think on the second question then, with respect to the basic education, I mean, I think it's true from the different interventions in the panel that there's rather important consensus about the importance of basic education taking into account many of the values that are associated with the social and solidarity economy, not just because it's for the social and solidarity economy, but because it's actually needed in the world more generally, in the job market. And I think what we see is interest in entrepreneurial skills, creative skills, and socio-emotional skills becoming particularly important. And all of those, I think, are also have the benefit of supporting a more vibrant social and solidarity economy and more engaged, empathetic societies.
Muy bien, bueno, con esta...
Thank you. And I think we only have time for those two answers. Thank you very much to all our panelists. Thank you, the four of you, for your participation, for sharing your ideas, for being very mindful and respectful of the time that was allotted to you. We're speaking about education, and all of you were very respectful, which speaks highly of you. So I appreciate that. And I also want to thank you on behalf of the organizers. Greetings from Argentina, and now I would like to give the floor back to my friends in Mexico. But don't forget about the picture. So I think everyone has the camera on, but just in case, keep it that way so that they can take our picture. So let's do that. To all our panelists, we will be taking that picture, and I give the floor back to our Masters of Ceremony in Mexico City.
En Sociedad Cooperativa Trabajadores de Pascual SCL, somos más que una embotelladora de bebidas de frutas. A través del tiempo, hemos demostrado que es posible la organización laboral para consolidar una empresa sana, que hoy es ejemplo del sistema cooperativista en México. Con bebidas como Boing, Pato Pascual y Lulú, que son nuestros estandartes, nos hemos mantenido en el gusto y preferencia de los consumidores de varias generaciones. Para conformarnos como cooperativa, hubo la necesidad de sensibilizar a todos los trabajadores y optar por un estilo laboral y de vida que nos permitiera mejorar nuestra situación económica, social y cultural. Este sistema ha logrado crear una sinergia de productividad y beneficio colectivo. Ser una empresa como esta es un gran orgullo, un ejemplo de perseverancia y esfuerzo, donde el consumidor es quien se beneficia al tener a su alcance productos nacionales de la mejor calidad. En Cooperativa Pascual estamos conformados por una extraordinaria infraestructura acorde al siglo XXI, en el que trabajamos con equipo y tecnología de vanguardia, lo que nos permite fijar metas a corto y largo plazo basadas en las necesidades del mercado y las preferencias de los consumidores. Contamos con 2 plantas de producción, una en San Juan del Río, Querétaro, y otra en Tizayuca, Hidalgo, en las que elaboramos toda la gama de productos aplicando los más altos estándares de calidad, con la confianza de responder en tiempo y forma a la gran demanda del cada vez más competido mercado de bebidas. En estas plantas producimos más de 40 millones de cajas anuales, con el apoyo de 4 sedes en la Ciudad de México, 30 sucursales y un creciente número de distribuidores autorizados a lo largo del territorio nacional. Comercializamos nuestras ya tradicionales marcas como son Boing, Pato Pascual, Lulú, Néctasis, Agua Purificada, Mexicola y Power Dog, además de la leche Pascual. Nuestras plantas tienen la certificación de sistemas de gestión de calidad ISO 9001-2015 en los procesos de elaboración de bebidas, néctares y pulpas de fruta. Asimismo, contamos con la certificación de FDA en Estados Unidos, lo que nos permite exportar nuestros productos a este país. Para la elaboración de nuestros productos, utilizamos fruta selecta, verificada directamente por nuestra área de control de calidad. Apoyamos el desarrollo y crecimiento del campo nacional, ya que beneficiando a los productores del campo mexicano, en Cooperativa Pascual consumimos más de 20,000 toneladas de frutas al año. Y con la compra directa del azúcar que se requiere para la elaboración de las bebidas que comercializamos, se apoya también a los ingenios azucareros de nuestro país. En una empresa como esta, basamos parte de nuestra fortaleza en la distribución de nuestros productos. Por esto, contamos con una infraestructura de unidades de reparto, asegurando así que nuestras bebidas se puedan disfrutar en cada rincón de México y el extranjero. Para Cooperativa Pascual, el consumidor es lo más importante. Por esto, nuestras decisiones, el personal, las inversiones en tecnología y capacitación se enfocan en satisfacer a los paladares más exigentes. La excelencia de nuestros productos nos ha merecido diversos premios, como el de la excelencia europea, el americano de calidad y reconocimientos internacionales al prestigio comercial de bebidas de marca y calidad. Dentro de la cooperativa tenemos una Fundación Cultural Trabajadores de Pascual y del Arte AC, con un amplio acervo pictórico de importantes artistas. Esta fundación realiza exposiciones por todo el país y apoya diversos proyectos culturales independientes. Por otra parte, contamos con un centro recreativo ubicado en San Juan, Teotihuacán, para el esparcimiento de los trabajadores y del público en general. Orgullosos de nuestra apuesta por el crecimiento sostenible, el compromiso con el medio ambiente, la creación de empleos y la integración, llevamos nuestras bebidas a cada vez más personas, que son la auténtica base de nuestro futuro. Ser una cooperativa no es solo una figura administrativa, es la orgullosa realidad de una empresa 100% mexicana. Somos lucha, somos calidad, somos la experiencia de más de 80 años en el mercado, somos líderes en la elaboración de bebidas, somos Cooperativa Pascual. calidad que sabe a tradición.